Hey everybody, welcome to my weekly Source and Sold, where I share everything that I sold in the previous week, as well as some of my favorite items that I picked up while I was thrifting, and also maybe some of the things that I learned a lot about or were new as part of my sourcing activities. Last week was really interesting, some definite highs and lows. In terms of highs, it was my best sales week of January. I also was able to get rid of and sell some things that have been sitting for quite some time. And I also had some lows, which was a designer box that I bought that was less than great. You may have seen that video. If you haven't, I'll add that at the end of this to share about that experience. But overall, it was a really interesting week, and I would say a really good, solid week. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it and start with the things that I sourced. And before I do that, I want to introduce myself if we have not met yet. My name is Malika, and I'm a relatively new seller. I started selling back in reselling starting back in the fall, and I had never been much of a thrifter. I really hadn't been a thrifter. I certainly didn't know much about reselling before I came to it. I talked a little bit about that in earlier videos, but turned out I loved it. And so now I'm starting to share about my experiences as a new reseller. So if you are thinking about jumping into reselling or new to it yourself and would like to hear about somebody else's experience, or even if you're a long-term reseller or you think this content is interesting, this video may be for you. So stick around while I share about what I sourced and sold during the week of January 24th through January 31st. I'm also going to share some of my year sales numbers too with everybody. So let's go ahead and get into the things that I sourced. I only thrifted once last week, and that was at the end of the week on Saturday on the 31st. And I also got the designer box that was part of my online sourcing that as I mentioned, I shared in a video last week. And that designer box, which I got from News Source, was kind of a disappointment. A lot of the things were dirty and stained or outdated, and it was a really expensive box. So I not only contacted them, let them know I have not received any sort of, any sort of deal or anything from it, which is fine. It just lets me know that I won't probably ever purchase from News Source again, or definitely not that particular box from News Source again. But there's some things I'm going to be able to salvage, but I shouldn't have to work this hard to make a $350 box work. So anyway, that's my little downside from last week. But overall, last week was really good. So I'm going to share with you things that I sourced, and I'm going to go ahead and do a countdown of my top 10 things that I picked up. And some of these will be grouped by brand in certain situations or similar types of pieces or items. So I also am someone who primarily sources women's clothing, do some accessories, a little bit of men's stuff. And so today it's mostly in my wheelhouse of women's clothing. So I'm going to start with my number 10 piece, which were these cargo pants Crow. If you're not familiar with Pilcrow, they are a Anthropologie brand, and I picked these up. These I would say Anthropologie pieces for me, or brands that are sold at Anthropologie, like Pilcrow, Cloth and Stone, Dolan, things like that are becoming kind of more bread and butter for me. And so I picked these up because they are cargo style, lightweight. These are really good as we're getting into warmer weather, thinking about warmer weather. I feel like this is going to be a pretty good piece for someone to want to pick up. So that was my thinking behind this one, and Pilcrow has moved pretty well for me. So that's my number 10, Pilcrow cargo pants. My number 9, another cargo pant. And this one is BDG, which is Urban Outfitters. This is another one I think for some people, bread and butter, and it's not necessarily something that's going to fetch a ton, but these will move. I feel like this is certainly a style based. I don't normally get Urban Outfitters unless the style is there, and this definitely is. And so this is another cargo wide leg, really cute lightweight pant, again also going into to the warmer weather. I have not had much success on Depop, so I'm also trying to pick up things that I think will maybe have better results on Depop as well. And so I'm hoping these types of wider leg cargo, more relaxed fit things that are more appealing to younger adults and teens will help boost up my Depop sales because I need it. Okay, so that was number 9, BDG by Urban Outfitters. Number 8, moving on. This is a Kookaburra by UGG. Show you right there. So this is like kind of like a sister brand to UGG that's like a more affordable than UGG, but this is a Sherpa Teddy fleece, really lightweight though. This is not very heavy, and I think this is the time of year that this is perfect. As the weather is, we're starting to come out of the super cold weather and getting into a little warmer, but you still need something. So that is why I picked this one up. And I have not sold Kookaburra by UGG yet. I've sold UGG and UGG moves fast, although I haven't sold any clothing. I've just only sold the boots. I'm hopeful on this one. And, I think I do well with selling the Sherpa kind of teddy coat style of items. So I'm hoping that this one will also do well. So that is my number 8 pick for the week of the things that I source, the Cool by UGG fleece. All right, moving into number 7. Number 7 is what's also become, I would say, a bread and butter for me. And this is Quince. And this is a merino wool baby alpaca quarter zip. So adorable, super soft. And Quince, I really try and pick up Quince as much as possible, particularly if it's reasonably priced. This one was a little bit higher, but I figured because it is that merino wool, a baby alpaca. I sold another sweater that was a cardigan sweater that was similar materials, and it went really fast for a pretty good price. So I'm hoping that will be the case with this one as well. But this is just so soft and just a really good basic to have, as Quince pieces are. So that is my number. Did I count right? This is my number 7. Number 7, Quince. All right, let's move on to my number 6 pick, which I was pretty happy about finding this, which is Patagonia, another cargo style wide leg, but these ones are cropped. So this is a cropped pant. Definitely will use keywords when I list this: outdoor and gorpcore and that sort of thing. This is just a really cute lightweight for somebody who's, into the outdoors. I don't think that pants that are Patagonia do as well as, certainly not going to do as well as like a jacket. But this, Patagonia, the name brand alone, is a boost and should help this move pretty quickly, even though it's not going to probably get a ton. And I got this at a pretty reasonable amount. I went, and I should have said when I only did this one thrifting trip, it was at my neighborhood Savers, which Savers prices are not fantastic, but I always make sure that I'm shopping at 20%. If you do go to Savers, if you donate, they'll give you a 20% coupon. You also, if you join Savers and you build up rewards, you will get 20% off. So I always make sure if I'm ever shopping at Savers, it's always at 20%. I also, and you'll see I have so many pants, is because I really like to go, their jeans, they like overprice their jeans. So unless it's like a really high-end brand like a Citizens of Humanity or Mother or Favorite Daughter or something, I don't buy jeans there, but I will buy a lot of other pants because they tend to price their pants around $7. And with the 20% off, it makes it worthwhile. I mean, I found amazing pants that I've shared in my other videos, like designer pants that they've had listed for or priced at $7.29, and with the 20% off, that these are like $70 or $80 pants. So just as a little side note, that is really what I like to try and do when I'm at Savers, is go down the aisles. That is the non-jeans pants section. And I like to also go in the long sleeve knit section because they also price those less than their sweaters, and they often will have lightweight sweaters there, as you will see in a moment that I'm going to get to. This number 6, Patagonia cargo pants. Okay, moving on to my number 5. And this is my number 5 because this is a new piece thing for me. I have not really sold intimate pieces yet. And so these are a pair of 2-piece pajama set of Soma. Soma is a really nice intimate undergarment brand. And so this is the top. And then there's pajama bottom, that piece that matches that. It's in a great size. It's a size large, and this is like a jersey knit, really cozy. This is gonna be loungewear, pajamas, either way. This was also priced really well. So this is one of those things I'm trying out. I have not sold these intimate pieces or pajama pieces, but this was in such incredible shape and felt really cozy. I'm gonna see how this does. I know that Soma is something that should move pretty well and is a really nice brand. I mean, Soma, if you buy it retail, it definitely is expensive, but I know that doesn't necessarily translate into it reselling well, but I'm hopeful on these. So that is my number 5 pick for what I picked up this week or last week. Okay, moving on to number 4. This is going to be a 2-4. This I picked up 2 Ellen Tracy pieces. I don't normally pick up Ellen Tracy. Actually, I think this is the first time I picked up Ellen Tracy. Ellen Tracy is a great brand and is also, I think, pretty expensive when you buy it retail. It is in places like Nordstrom, Macy, and other high-end stores, but I don't think it necessarily moves as quickly on the resale market unless you find some really either quality pieces or style-based pieces. So these are both falling into the quality. I'm going to start with this silk blouse. So this is Ellen Tracy, and that's what their tag looks like. And this was also a collab that I thought was interesting. I looked it up. I wasn't really familiar with who the collab was with, but it's a collab piece, and it's 100% silk, and it is really just a really nice blouse. This is like a good workwear piece for someone, so definitely we'll use keywords around office, business casual, workwear, business, things like that. And so that is part 1 of this grouping. The part 2 of this Ellen Tracy grouping is this new with tag 100% cashmere sweater. This is an example of something that was not with the sweaters. It was in the long sleeve knit section, which I found at least in my Savers. So if you have a Savers near you, check. I know they're different and they all will put things in different places. My Savers tends to put cashmere because it's lighter with the long sleeve knits instead of the sweaters. So I always check both places, and then when it's with the long sleeve knits, it moves, or excuse me, people don't notice it, and it's cheaper. So anyway, so this is new with tags, this sort of oatmeal brown, light brown color, but just a little crew neck, basic cashmere sweater, but it's new with tags. So do like to pick up cashmere whenever I can if it's in good condition. It's just an automatic for me, and I find that most of the cashmere that I pick up tends to sell in the $25 to $35 range. I do have high hopes for this, but that is part of my Ellen Tracy set that I have as my number 4 pick for the week. So moving on to my number, and I'm super excited about these. First time I have actually found Spanx. And my understanding from other resellers is Spanx doesn't do as well as it used to, but I think these are still going to do really well. These are flare, you can see at the bottom, and they are a faux leather, and this is like in a navy blue. They are in like new condition. There is no flaws to these whatsoever. Again, an example of something I picked up in the regular pants section, priced a lot lower. These, they priced up a little bit because they're Spanx, but if they had been, they still weren't really around what they priced the jeans at. So I got these with my 20% discount. I think I paid $8 or $9 for these, but these should get probably at least like 50. The style is really great. This faux leather, it's like a really soft faux leather. These are fantastic. So this is my number 3 pick for the week. My number 2 pick actually did come out of the designer box. And the only reason this landed as my number 2 is because I was able to get off a lot of the dirt and stains that were on this. But this number 2 is this beautiful Alice and Olivia draped maxi dress. This is an absolutely gorgeous dress. It has this sheer corset on it. Let me show you the label of Alice and Olivia so you can be on the lookout for Alice and Olivia. This is a very nice higher end brand that certainly resells for a lot of money. This dress, I did not look up to see how much this dress, actually I did. I looked, this is still out there. I was able to find stock photos for this, but it's on sale. And right now I found one thing on sale for, I think it was $218 for this dress. And I think that I'll probably be able to get, I'm hoping 70 to 80, which will not certainly get back my 350 on that box, but it'll make a good dent. But I will tell you, when I got this, it had dirt all over it. It was like it had been dragged down the street. I'm not kidding. I mean, I think that's what it was. I don't think that the person who had it did anything. I think just how it had been handled once it was donated created a lot of dirt on it. And I have been able to get almost all of it out using stain treatments. There's still little spots, so I'm going to still work on it a little bit more. But this is just such a beautiful piece and is obviously my favorite piece out of that designer box. And so this is my number 2. I'm actually really excited to see what I can do with this Alice and Olivia piece. So hopefully stay tuned. That'll hopefully show up in a sales half of my weekly source and sold soon. The other thing that I'm hopeful about, because we're entering in different dance seasons, so maybe that might be a good prom dress for someone, or some sort of formal that's coming up. My hope is that will draw attention for one of those types of things. Okay, moving into my number 1. So my number 1 is a collection of purses and wallets. And the reason I wanted to share this as my number 1 is for anybody else out there who's learning or trying to think of different ways to sort. I have started to check, because when I go look at purses and wallets that are in like the nicer section, they have those things overly priced, and it's just like with oversaturated stuff. Like, I am not going to buy a Kate Spade bag or even a Dooneyberg or Michael Kors or any of that at the thrift store. They're just way overpriced, and they also way oversaturated, and they're just, they're the same price, if not more, than you would be able to get for it if you try to resell it. So I just don't even bother there. But what I also know to be true is a lot of the people who are pricing at thrift stores don't know most brands. They know the brands that are famous or the brands that everybody knows, like a Kate Spade, like a Michael Kors. And so they know to price those high, but they don't know to price certain things high that are actually higher end brands. So I have taken to actually going just to the main section, and I'm right now focused on looking for things like genuine leather bags. So I'll go in and I'm looking for things that are genuine leather, looking for like a good nylon bags, because good quality nylon will also get a decent amount, particularly if you can find a good brand. A good example of one that probably most thrift stores know is like a Longchamp, which is a very high-end brand that they're known for their nylon totes. But there's a lot of other brands that are not good nylon totes that can still get you $20, $30, $40 that they'll price at the thrift store for $3 to $5 because they don't know what it is. So that is what I focused on doing the last time. I just spent last couple of times I've gone to the thrift store, I've tried to look through and see what I can find. So I did find 3 things that I wanted to share with you all that are not going to sell for or resell for a ton, but they are interesting pieces and they're all leather. Okay, so the first one is this Prince Gardner wallet. Not sure you can see it. Says it on that tag right there, and then this is what the actual branding on the wallet looks like. So this is a men's wallet, and it's just a bifold wallet, and it is made out of, because I found it very small in here, but it is made out of pigskin, which is still a genuine leather. It is not as much as like a cowhide leather, but it was on here, and this is a pigskin leather. So I looked up at comps, and this is in excellent condition. It's got like that writing, if you saw in here, it's got like a vintage look to it. This looks like it has been used, or someone had this for a really long time, even though it's in amazing shape. So I think it might be vintage, but the vintage wallets of this Prince Gardner go pretty high, not super high, but a higher, like more like a 60-ish range. The other ones I saw, their comps that were more around 20. But I'm okay with that. I probably will list this for 35 or something like that and see where it goes, because I only paid, well, it was listed at 349, or it was priced at 349, and I got 20% off of that. So this, to me, example of worth picking up. If I can flip this for $20 or $25 for a $3 pickup, or ultimately a little less than that, that's worth it to me. The next one I got was the sack, little crossbody, also leather. And the sack is a pretty well-known mid-level brand that they do genuine leathers and suedes. They are not considered a high end, but they are pretty well known. I'm sure this shows up, but this is a good example of what their logo looks like and the brand looks like on their purses and bags. They are, I think, very good quality. I actually have a suede, the sack, and I love it. And so when I see these, I like to try and pick them up. I found another sack. But the downside is that thrift stores tend to know that this is a pretty good brand to sell. So they do price this one higher. And this one I did pay up a little bit for, but it is in awesome, excellent condition. There are no flaws on this little bag whatsoever. So I do think that this one will go pretty well. It is just like a gold crossbody wallet, essentially, with a strap. And so you can use it with the strap or without, like you take it off and put it in a bigger purse. So it's pretty versatile. And so I think that this one will move pretty quickly, which is another goal for me. They'll have a blend of things that I know that I can flip and move pretty quickly. And then maybe if there's higher end stuff that's going to take a little while, like potentially that Alice and Olivia, that I'm okay, because there's other stuff that I'm keeping moving. Okay. And then the last piece that I bought that's part of my number one grouping is this. It is, I hope this is going to show up well, but this is another leather piece, and it is 18, which is a pretty well-known brand in terms of leather bags, leather accessories. But this is just a leather handbag bag that's got the little clock embossing on the corners. And this is also in great shape. There's no tears, no rips. I'm going to probably have to stuff some paper in it to make it sit right. But, excuse me, one of the key reasons I got this, and this is an example of them just really not knowing, is they had this priced at $3.99. So this bag I will probably list for $60 and then see where it goes from there. But the leather on this is incredibly soft. This is a very well-made bag. The other thing I look for when I'm over checking to see what I can find is if it has these little things at the bottom for the purse. If you see larger bags that have this, definitely check and see what it is, because they tend to more higher made or well made bags, or more higher end bags are going to put these little knobbies on here so that they can sit on the floor and not get damaged. So that's another piece to look for. But the logo for ATN is that. And so that is the final of my number one things of what I sourced, which was a collection of bags and wallets. So that's it for my sourcing. It was a solid week of sourcing. I do feel like I spent way too much money as someone who was trying to get their average cost of goods below $5. This was not the week for that at all. So I'm turning over a new leaf in February, which I'll be talking about more later. But let's now go ahead and move over to what sold this week. Okay, let's talk sales for last week, January 25th through 31st, which I think I said wrong when I was talking about what I sourced. But for sales, I will just say overall, it was a very good sales week. I am very thankful and happy. I had a total of 15 sales, and they were not high value sales, like in terms of they weren't big numbers, but they were really steady, which was nice. So it was the week that I sold the most, but did not make the most. So we'll get into that a little bit more as I go. Also at the end, going going to share my month end numbers because the last day of the month fell on the last day of the week. So it was a good opportunity to take a look at all of that and then really figure out what my takeaways were from that information. So I'm going to share that with you in case that might be helpful for some of you who may be in a similar position as me, who are trying to just increase your sales as a reseller or also increase profit or also increase just your information and knowledge around reselling. So let's go ahead and get into the first piece that sold on January 20th. So this was my first sale on the 25th. I had 3 sales that day. And so this first sale was this Banana Republic fuchsia eyelet peplum top with ruffle straps. I believe that Banana Republic is my biggest selling brand. And this was also new with tags, which was nice. This sold in, I had it listed for one day. I had sourced it the week before. So I listed it on the 24th and it sold for 25, which I believe was my full asking price. This is just a really great little piece that, is going to be for summer. It definitely shows that you can sell a summer piece in the dead of winter. I don't know if somebody was planning a vacay or if they're just readying themselves for the warmer weather or live somewhere warm. I can't remember where they lived, but I was super excited this sold as fast as it did for the price that it did. And so on the $25 sale, my earnings were $20, and cost of goods on this was $2.57 for a profit of $17.43 for this piece. I tell you what, if this was how it could work all day long, I would be absolutely thrilled. Okay, moving on to my next sale on the 25th. It was this BP, and I'm going to show this. The brand is BP. So if you come across BP, if you're not familiar, BP stands for Brass Plum, which is Nordstrom's junior line. And so a lot of people don't know BP. So if I find BP pieces, I say Nordstrom BP in the title and again in the description. So that's just a note. If you come across BP, it's Nordstrom. BP is the actual resale value is not super high. So you're really not going to make a ton off of a BP piece, but they're usually pretty well made. It's a Nordstrom in-house brand. This was 100% cotton. So while I wouldn't pick up everything BP, I think where BP can be an advantage is for style-based pickups. Particularly if it's a newer piece, and it's going to usually be like trendier stuffing that's going to draw a younger buyer. This is not an example of that. It just felt like a very good a piece that would be a good staple for somebody. So that was what led me to pick this one up. And I did have it listed for a while, which that is a theme of this week. I actually moved a lot of my older pieces, things that have been listed since I started reselling. But this one I had listed for 79 days. It sold for $21. My earnings were $16.80. And that's after Poshmark's fees. And my cost of goods on this was $7.97. I would say, with knowing what I know now, I would not have paid that much for this piece because ultimately my profit on it was $8.83. And I think I don't want something sitting in my closet that long that I'm only going to get an $8.83 profit. That's not probably worth it. But living and learning as a new reseller for sure. Okay, so moving on to my next sale. This is my last sale of the day. You know what? I stand corrected. I sold the fuchsia piece on the 20th. The last piece I just showed you, the Nordstrom, was actually the 26th. So I stand corrected. The 26th, I had 2 sales. So 1 sale on the 25th, 2 sales on the 26th. I messed that up. So anyway, so the second sale on the 26th was this Brooks Brothers women's cotton button-up shirt. Brooks Brothers, I really like picking up. Depending on the piece, it can fetch a good amount. This certainly wasn't one I was expecting a ton out of, but I felt like it would sell well. It's 100% cotton, nice workwear type of blouse. And as I'm learning more, I would probably put more keywords in this than I did initially, but this was listed for 56 days. So this was still earlier in my reselling, and it sold for 23. My earnings on this after Poshmark fees was $18.40. My cost of goods, $9.20. It's an example of I would not today pay that much for this shirt, but my profit was $9.20. So I cannot complain. As long as I'm still getting profit in these earlier stages of my reselling, I am thrilled. I am thrilled, even if it's not a ton of profit. Okay, next item sold on eBay, and this was on the 27th, and this was my one sell for that day. And this was great cashmere piece. I love picking up cashmere. This was a Charter Club cashmere turtleneck sweater. One of the things that I learned, at least for me, the turtleneck cashmere sweaters really sell well. This is Charter Club, which is an in-house Macy's brand that I think when you go to Macy's, it's pretty expensive, but does not resell super well. So I had this initially listed for 31 and it ultimately sold for 25. So my earnings after eBay's fees was $18.46. And my cost of goods on this was only a dollar for I picked this up at the bins in December. So I had this listed for 24 days. And the average cost of that particular Vince haul was $1.44. I'll also say on my cost of good numbers, y'all, I always add in the tax. So the number I'm sharing with you includes the tax on the cost of good. And so it was $1.44 average cost of goods at Bid Strip. So my profit on this was $17.02. That is fabulous. I love, love, love that. Okay, so that was one sale for the 27th. Moving on to the 28th was this Mag Studio open cardigan. This is another example of a piece that sat forever. Mac Studio, this is one of those examples. I think that I'm trying to learn and separate my own likes from what is going to sell. I personally like Mac Studio. So when I was first like drifting, I was like, "Ooh, Mac Studio." And I'm like picking it all up and finding that Mac Studio does not necessarily resell very well, even though this is when it was in the stores was like an almost $100 sweater and it ultimately sold, as you will see, for $20 for me. But this actually sat in my Poshmark closet for 104 days. So this was probably one of the very first thrifting hauls I ever had. And so I was thrilled when this sold because I you couldn't have told me this wasn't going to sell in the fall. I was like, oh my God, look at these amazing fall colors. Oh yeah, this is going to be quick. This is going to be easy. And it did have likes here and there, but it took a minute to sell. So I was so happy. I was like so ready to, yes, please take this off my hands. And it's beautiful. This is also, I don't think buyers care for beautiful. I would not put beautiful again in the title like I did here, but living and learning, I was just like, this is beautiful. And the sweater is beautiful. And I will say, the buyer, when she got it, was just like, oh my God, it's perfect. She was so happy with it. So that is also super rewarding, I will say, about reselling, making the buyer happy and seeing their reaction when they get something and feeling like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Or some people who are trying to replace something that they didn't or they used to have. And that happens a lot more on eBay. But that just is super rewarding, a big rewarding part of doing reselling that I was not expecting. But anyway, this sold for 20. My earnings after Poshmark takes their 20% fee was $16. And my cost of goods on this was $6.68. And so I made a profit of $9.32. Bye bye to this Mac Studio open cardigan. Thrilled to see it go. Okay, next piece that I sold was the next day. And this was starting on the 29th, my best sales day of the week, where I had sales that day. And this first one is this Lands End blue and white Oxford shirt. It was new with tags. And this is another one. Oh my gosh, I can tell by my pictures that I was early on in this, but this sat in my closet for 102 days. I can tell I didn't know to, this is funny, I didn't know to make it square to go with Poshmark. So if you are also new, you want to make sure that you set your camera to the square setting so that it fits in the Poshmark photo window, which I did not know at first. And so that's why a lot of my pictures, my earlier photos and earlier listings have like you can see on the edge because they're more rectangular rather than square. This is also horrible lighting, horrible angle. I'm just embarrassed to share this with you. But anyway, this sold after being listed for 102 days. Lands End, which is just for me a solid bread and butter. I really like selling Lands End. They have really quality pieces, and it's not going to always sell like for a lot, but I think that it's just recognizable. If people know that it's good quality, they don't necessarily want to pay a ton for it, but they will pay for it. And there's definitely a contingent of people who really like Lands End. I think especially people who live like in the New England area or in the Northeast or are from that area. So this sold for 20 and I got 16 after my cost of goods on this was 10.50. This is earlier in my reselling. I honestly thought this would have sold for a lot more. And I now know better, but back then I didn't know. But so my profit on this was only $5.50. Really happy to get this out of my closet after 102 days. So that was my first sale on the 29th. My second sale on the 29th was over at eBay. And actually, that was where the rest of my sales, it was just like my phone and my computer were popping off from eBay that day. I was just, oh my gosh, I was so excited. Anyway, the next sale was this Tahari Arthur S. Levine gray zipper front career jacket. This is one that I had listed on Poshmark for a while. And it's an example of once I started cross listing that it just helped it move. So if you're out there and you haven't cross listed, I will tell you it's worth it. It will pay for itself. It will really boost your sales to get cross listed across multiple platforms. But this one I had listed for on eBay for $34.99. It ultimately sold for $26. I had it listed for 34 days total, but it was only on eBay for about maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And my earnings after eBay fees was $19.59. My cost of goods was $10.84. And so my profit on this was $8.75. I'm not sure I would have paid that much again. I probably could have held out for more than 26, but I was trying to move this piece because it started to feel like it was sitting for a while, even though I guess in the grand scheme of things, 34 days isn't long, but I guess it's all relative. Still, as a new reseller, that feels really long. I'm sure as I am doing this longer, that won't feel like such a long period of time, but it felt long to me. I don't think Tahari necessarily sells for a lot in general, but it was a pretty substantial, nice piece as a blazer. So I probably could have gotten more, but I'm okay with this. Okay, moving on to my next sale. This one was kind of fun for me. This was a United Colors of Benetton Pure New Wool Shetland Italian sweater. When I saw this, I wasn't sure if it was vintage. If any of you out there are like me from the 80s and 90s, maybe remember going to the mall and always going into Benetton. Remember how Benetton prices were like crazy expensive, but they also always had like 70, 90% off sales. So it was like, yes, this sweater is $120, but you can have it for $25 or $30 or whatever. But Benetton, just high quality pieces. So this was pure new wool. Shetland Italian wool. Again, I don't think it was vintage. I looked it up and Benetton still is in operation. I don't think this was vintage. So I couldn't advertise it as, but it did sell. I did have this listed for 56 days. Again, this was one that was mostly on Poshmark and didn't get it cross listed over to eBay until this month or last month until January. So it really was only in my store on eBay for 2 or 3 weeks before it sold. And it sold for $30. My earnings was $26.53. And my cost of goods on this was $10.06 for a profit of $16.47. And then my next sale, again on eBay, was what definitely, and as I mentioned during my sourcing, that Quince has become a true bread and butter. I really like picking up Quince. I definitely highly recommend picking up Quince. It's pretty brand right now. People know it. It's not, you're not going to break the bank in terms of what you're going to get in terms of a fee for Quince, but or how much people are going to pay for it because you can buy directly from Quince at a reasonable price, which is part of their model. But the pieces are so high quality and people know that they will pay for it if it's at reasonably priced and it's in good condition. So this was 100% silk blouse. And the other thing about Quince is their silk is washable, whereas a lot of other 100% silk pieces are not. That is also an advantage advantage of coins that I think go into why a lot of people look for it. So I originally had this listed for 34, but it sold for 25 and I had it listed for 11 days, which is pretty typical for coins moves relatively fast for me. My earnings on this after eBay fees was $20.80. My cost of goods on this was $4.01. So my profit was $16.79. Quits just cannot say enough about how much I love coin. And my next piece was another one that had sat forever. So this is the last sale I had on the 29th, and it was this cashmere INC sweater, which INC International Concepts is mostly sold, I think, at Macy's. I don't know if it's exclusively sold at Macy's, but I think it might be. It's a Macy's in-house brand. Oh, look, y'all, I didn't even know how to measure pit to pit. Look at that picture. This is, you can tell it's earlier in my picture taking. This is just so funny to me. Anyway, I had this listed on Poshmark starting, let's see, it was totally listed total for 102 days. And this got a lot of attention. People were liking this all over the place and nobody was buying it. And I moved it over, cross listed it over to eBay, and it fortunately sold within a couple, 2 or 3 weeks being on eBay. And it sold for $28, which I was happy to take. My earnings after eBay fees was $23.81. Cost of goods, $7.96. And my profit was $15.85. So happy to see that one go. So those are my sales, the 5 sales for the 29th. Moving on to the 30th, I had 4 sales that day. So it was another good day of sales. The first one, it was over on Poshmark, and it was this Anna and Frank 100% silk blouse. Anna and Frank is a brand I still don't know a ton about. I picked this up because it was 100% silk and it sold for $25 after Poshmark's fees. I made $20. My cost of goods on this was $7.54, and my profit was $12.46. Moving on to my second sale of that day on the 30th was this Patagonia woman's full zip Sherpa fleece jacket. I let this go for less than I normally would let a Patagonia fleece jacket go because when I got this, I could see it had some wear, which I put in the pictures. Let's see if I can find a good picture of it. But I did not realize until I got home that the zipper sticks big time. Like it couldn't even get it zipped up initially. Yeah, see, there's some of the wear. This was a well worn fleece. The inside was in amazing shape, but the outside had some wear and then the zipper stuck. So I let this one go for a lot less than I would have normally let a Patagonia fleece go. But I didn't have it listed long. It sold after being listed for 7 days. I sold it for 22. My earnings was $17.60. Cost of goods, $10.55. And I paid up for this because even though I saw the wear on the outside, I was like, oh, I can fluff this up a little bit. And I didn't realize the zipper was broken. So that was like, note to self, check zippers before you leave the store. There's no way in heck I would have paid that much for it if I had not done that, or if I had done that. But anyway, still profitable. So my profit on this was $7.05. So that is okay. Because again, when I can take away a lesson, that is worth something too. Okay, next sale on the 30th was this Wilfred Free Merlino wool crew neck sweater. Wilfred Free is an Aritzia brand, and I'll show this there. This was a kind of a tougher size because it was extra small, and I knew that going in, but I know that Wilfred Free is Aritzia. I actually thought I didn't know that Aritzia didn't move very quickly because I just know that Aritzia is a very nice retailer and their pieces are really good and they retail really high. But on the resale market, at least I guess now, maybe in the past, it used to do better, but it doesn't do as well. But I feel pretty good about this, even though it did take 50 days to sell, which I think is still just great or still fine, and it sold for $35. I had it originally listed for $48, but it sold for 35, which I was happy about. and my earnings after Poshmark fees was $28. My cost of goods on this was $10.06. This is example something I paid up for, thinking it was going to probably fetch a lot more, but I still made a profit of $17.94. So that is for me still a win for sure. Okay. My last sale on the 30th was over in Macari. Yay. So two bonuses about this sale. One, I sold something on Macari again, which has been really hard for me. I think this is only like the fourth thing I've sold on Macari. And I can say, and I can definitely tell the Macari shopper is all about a bargain. I don't think I've sold anything on Macari for more than like 20-ish dollars. But the other great thing about this particular sale is I had bought in December pre-loved box from Goodwill Blue Box, and I didn't do a video about this particular box because this one wasn't as great overall. I did a video about another box which I'll probably link to at the end of this video, but I was so happy that this sold from that box because this is the first thing I've sold from any online resource that I've used. So I've bought now 4 boxes, and this is my first sale out of any of them. So yay, sold for $15. I think it's okay. Things sell a little less on Macari because they take less fees, but this sold for $15. My earnings was $12.41. My average cost of goods for that box was $4.25. Could have been less because the box wasn't that expensive, but I couldn't, like 3 or 4 of the things in there were not at all worth selling. So 425 average cost of goods. So my profit on that is $8.16. So all around really positive sale, good things out of that. And so that ended the 30th. And then on the 31st, the last day of the week and the month, I had one sale, and it was this Kill Crow by Anthropologie floral button front shirt. And this is a pickup that I really had a lot of confidence in. It's just a beautiful top. I bought it in the dead of winter, but I knew I had all the confidence in the world in this one. This one was in my closet for 44 days, which I actually was expecting that it could potentially be in my closet longer. So I was really pleased that it sold when it did. And it sold for $34. And so after Poshmark fees, my earnings was $27.20. Cost of goods was $10.64. I did pay up for this, but my profit was $16.56. Potentially, I could have held on to this a little bit longer. And then once we were fully in the swing of spring shopping, I probably could have fetched a little bit more. But I felt good about $34. So I went ahead and let it go at that price. So that wraps up all of my sales for the week. I had a total of 15 sales for the week. Super happy about that. And looking at the dollars, I had $374 in total sales for the week. My earnings after fees taken out from the platforms was $301.60. My total cost of goods for everything that sold last week was $114.27, a little high. And my profit was $187.33. So the other number that I'm going to be adding on and looking at each week is my average cost of goods, since I'm really prioritizing trying to get that number down. So my average cost of goods was $7.61 on everything that sold last week. That's obviously too high, but I also can think about the fact that a lot of the things that sold this past week were things that had been sitting for a while and were things that I picked up in my earlier days of thrifting when I was still really green and didn't know much. And I'm picking this thing up like for $10. That looks like a good deal. So that was still my mindset. So when I factor that in, it's still not at all where I want to be, but it also makes sense. So that was for the week. Now I want to look at the whole month and share with you where I landed, and then also, now that I know where I landed, what I'm going to be doing with that information. So I had a total for January in sales of $1,488.99. I actually have to adjust that number because in January did have my first return, and I talked about that in a video a couple of weeks ago, but a return that was totally on me, my mistake that I had to retake that out of my total. And so my actual total sales was $1,470.99, which still as a newish reseller, I want to just clap and be excited because I still think that's great. It's quite a bit less than what I did in December, which I think lulled me into a little bit of a false sense of security because I hit $2,000 in sales in December. Part of that was, I think, December must be a better month than January. I'd love to hear from any of you in the comments about whether or not that's true. I've heard that January is not as great and December is good, but please tell me in the comments what your experience is or what you know if you're a long term person. Is that true or not? Or if you're newer or what you actually experienced in the month of December and January. But moving on, $1,470.99 total sales. And then after all the fees were taken out by the platforms, my total earnings was $1,151.98. And my total cost of goods on everything that sold in January was $373.80. And my profit, once you take out the fees and the cost of goods, was $778.18. So that's the profit that I was working with for the end of the month, thinking about what I need to put towards taxes from that, and then what I'm putting back into the business, and then what I am keeping in my pocket. That is the number I'm working with. Now, when I start to dig into that a little bit further, and I look at, okay, almost $1,500 in sales. And then that ultimately, what I take home from that is just under $800 in profit. So, like half of that means that it was going towards fees for the platforms and my cost of goods. And the fees on the platforms are pretty much what they are. Can't do a ton there. I mean, Poshmark for sure. I can't do anything. That's the place where I sell most of my stuff, which I like. I like selling on Poshmark a lot. But eBay, I can influence a little. Like maybe I don't promote as much because I am trying to use their promoter tool to, and it actually seems to be working. I also can maybe like not promote as much on Depop, although I'm not making anything really on Depop. But my point is, I can't do a lot with the fees. What I can influence is my cost of goods. So again, that's the place where I'm really going to focus on bringing down my cost of goods so my profit margin goes up. The other thing I can influence is my pricing, and I'm sure I have some work to do there. And I think I'm just going to give myself a little bit more time to figure out how to calibrate on that. So, right now, my priority though is cost of goods because I absolutely can spend less money and have better strategies around what I'm spending. So, that's a priority there. And I didn't say this, I don't think, but my average cost of goods for the month of January or everything that sold in the month of January was $7.19. So again, I doubt I'll be there for February, but I would say by April, I for sure want to see that number below $5. So we'll see. I would love to hear from you all. Where do you guys target cost of goods? Do you have a number that you target? Does it change? What's your experience there? I just would love to hear from other people. I watch a lot of other creators who are resellers, and I don't hear too many talk about it. I've heard like the number $3. The other big number I was looking at that I had set a goal around and was able to do some analysis on was my average sale rate. And so that for the month of January was $28.29, which is right in the window that I had as a goal. During these newer months, my target is to between 25 and 30, but I want to get closer to 30 because I think ultimately where I want to be long term as a reseller is somewhere between 30 and 40. What do you all do for your average sale rates? I've heard some people talk about it, but not many. So super interested in knowing what other people target for that number. But if I can get my average cost of goods below $5 and have my average sale rate at $30, that's a times six number. And that would feel really good for me because when I think about, again, the profit, I mentioned taxes, but I also have to factor in any sort of monthly subscriptions that I have. Like I use Posture VA, for example, and paying for that every month. I'm now using Nifty for cross selling, paying for that. So I need to get these numbers up so that when I'm factoring in all of my costs, gas is another thing, supplies, that I'm still feeling like my profit's good. But where I am and the point I'm in, this feels really solid, and I'm really happy about what I'm doing at this point in time. So I just want to thank you for being here. Let me know in the comments what your favorite things were that you maybe sold this week or that you sourced in the past week. What were some big sales for you? I would love to know. I would just super curious about whether other people's experiences are, especially if you are part time or you're new like me. Love to hear from any OG resellers. If you are watching this, what's your experience been? And especially like January, is that normally slow? What can we expect for February? I'm recording this on February 2nd or 3rd. And I would just love to hear because I am super curious and I am just like thirsty for knowledge and feedback. So if there's other things that you can inform me about that you do that is different than me that has been helpful, I'd love to hear that too. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for being with me. If you are interested in hearing more about what I sourced and sold, I do this every week. So please subscribe. I would love to have you be here with me. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up or a like. And until the next time, take care.